the Osemach community. I've got a tremendous Hakaras Hatov to all the Rabbonim and to the Anhola and to the community. I have very fond memories of becoming connected to Yiddishkeit through Osemach. It was really the basis for a lot of the people. I know myself and Arvin and a lot of the other people that are on the talk as well. So it's really it's really special. I appreciate giving me an opportunity to share some words of Torah with the community. And I wanted to share something which I'm very passionate about. And just looking now at this time period and hearing from Arvin and his feelings on things. So one of the opinions is that the Lashon of Shavuos is also Atzeres. And Atzeres is always the end of a Chag. And like Shmini Atzeres, it's the end of the Chag. So Pesach was the beginning of the Chag and it ended on Shavuos. That was the whole time of Atzeres. And Lamaisa, most of us all experienced it in a real way because basically lockdown began pretty much just before Pesach. And it ended just after Shavuos. It was a time where we mamash had the time to really be makpid on all the dinei cholamoid because we weren't able to go anywhere. There weren't even tiulim that we could do during that time. And it was a time of real introspection. And one of the things that I'm very passionate about is a concept which I'm developing and have developed, which is the idea of understanding the power of 40 days and how 40 days manifests itself in our lives and in the Torah. And it keeps coming back and telling us different stories and different ideas. So I wanted to just share an idea with the Olam that the Yesod is that the amount of time that it takes to transform a situation from one reality to another is the time period is 40 days. And how do we know this? Because the formation of a human being takes 40 days from conception until the fetus becomes a living entity. And 40 days from conception, parents are able to daven for the sex of a child. And after that, it becomes decided whether it's going to be a boy or a girl. And 40 days now, that process began. Now it ends at 40 days, but it begins a 40-week process of the development of a child where they will now learn Torah for 40 weeks and be sustained in water, which is the word mayim, which is mem, yud, mem. And just like a tadpole, until it's fully developed, has to do that. And then it comes out and it begins a new reality. And when the Shloach Kodesh says that if you want to understand a concept, then you have to look at the first time that it's mentioned. So the first time that the number 40 is mentioned, we find is by the Mabul. Is that Noach was told that the world had got to a stage of depravity to such an extent that the world had to be destroyed. And Hashem decided that even though He created the world only in 6 days and rested on the seventh day, that it would take a period of time of 40 days to be able to destroy the world. And the way that Hashem did that was He submerged the world into a mikveh. And basically when He did that, He gave the world an opportunity to begin again, just as a baby emerges from the waters. So the whole world needed to be submerged and purged from all its misappropriation and all of the desires and everything that happened. And the reality of that generation was that the word gezel, which is Gematria 40, is one of the things that destroyed the core essence of that reality. And they also got involved in Arias. And so the Gemara tells us that whenever there's anything to do with Arias, so both the good and the bad get destroyed. And so Hashem saw that the world had become corrupted and it needed to be destroyed. And so then for 40 days and for 40 nights, water was brought into the world. And the reality is that when we take a look and we want to try and understand why does it take this time period and how are we able to tap into it. So when the Torah, the Jewish people received the Torah for the first time, when Moshe went up the mountain, he went up the mountain for 40 days and for 40 nights to go and receive the Torah. and he didn't eat or drink anything, and basically was nourished completely by the Ziva Shechina for that time period. And basically just before that period of time was the time when God carved out the tablets for the Jewish people. He did the carving out of the tablets, and he wrote the Michtav Elokim. It was everything. God was involved in the whole process. And then when Moshe came down the mountain after those first 40 days, he found them worshipping a calf. And then he spent 40 days davening to the Ribono Shel Olam to be able to forgive the Jewish people. He prayed along with the Jewish people, and Hashem basically gave him an opportunity to say what they had done was wrong, and to daven and ask Hashem for rachamim. And then finally in Rosh Chodesh Elul, so he goes up again for 40 days and for 40 nights, and comes back down on Yom Kippur, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, now for the second time period that he's gone up there, after he comes down, so Hashem says, Solachti kidvorecha, that you're going to be able to be forgiven because you've gone through that 120 days, which is a chazaka of 40 days, 40 days, and 40 days, in order to create that process. And so the first 40 days was all the elements of Hashem. The second was that we were now coming and asking for forgiveness for Hashem, davening like we've never davened for anything in our lives before. And the last final 40 days was a process where the Torah tells us, that you have to now carve out the luchos, right? That it's you have to do the carving out. No longer is it going to be, everything's going to be from Hashem. He'll put the neshama into the luchos, but it was our time now to carve out our reality. That was the essence of what that period was. So after these 3 40-day periods, which created a chazaka of 120 days, because that's the concept of shleimus, so then Hashem said to us, Solachti kidvarecha, and straight after he forgave us, right, and he says, I've forgiven you, then we started to then begin and create the Mishkan, because that was our answer. Now Hashem had forgiven us. We now are going to build a house so that Hashem's Shekhinah can come and dwell in our place. So that was really the period of history which created that impetus and that ability for the Jewish people to be able to then begin again. That was the beginning of our reality. And so when we take a look and we realize that this time period now that we are going through is on the 16th of Tammuz, which is coming up pretty soon, is going to be the first 40 days. The first 40 days that Moshe went up the mountain, and then the second 40 days and the final 40 days. And when we now reading in this week's Parsha, so it says, Shlach lecha anoshim, that Hashem said, Moshe, if you want to send people, then go ahead. And we found that the Shvatim all sent a representative into the land of Eretz Yisrael, and they went and they spied out the land for 40 days. And they came back down and they gave an evil report about the land. And they said that because this land, right, is, this is its fruit, and it showed all the Piriya, and came along, and only 2 of the Shvatim were the ones, Kalev and Yeshua, didn't come and do it. So those 10 people used those 40 days, because it came back and they spoke Lashon Hara. They came and showed that those 40 days were used and were done, and they misappropriated that time period. And so Hashem said, because you didn't use that 40 days properly, because you had an agenda and you came back and you showed when you came and cried for nothing, so that became a time of tragedy for the Jewish people on always. And now in order to rectify that tikkun, we had to now spend 40 years in the desert. And that 40 years wasn't going to be good enough that we were even able to go back into Eretz Yisrael for that generation. It had to only be that the following generation would go into Eretz Yisrael. So they lost that chance, and they had to now build up what it was to spend 40 years in a land that wasn't their own. They had to spend 40 years in the desert. They had to learn what it was to be in the Midbar, to go through that process in order to then now be able to then go into Eretz Yisrael. And so we find that the number 40 represents itself in many different aspects. It's a tikkun in so many different places that we see that when a person goes to the mikveh, the minimum amount of water that makes a mikveh kosher is 40 seah. That measurement is the measurement to make a change from one state to another. And in the days when a person was able to connect in the Beis Hamikdash, and they did something wrong, so they got 40 lashes, because that was what Hashem wanted, was to show the world that 40 lashes was that if you had to have 40, but it was really 39, because 40 was scared would kill a person, it would take them to the next stage, because that's the power of what 40 is. And so one of the things that I do, and I'm going to conclude, there's a whole lot and to talk about this on various different levels, but one of the things that I've tapped into is that if Hashem decided that for 40 days was such a powerful number, and because it is a changing from one state to another, you can change your reality. So then obviously if we can tap into that in a koach that Hashem would want for us to do, so then that would be able to be a tremendous tikkun, it would be a fixing up for many of the things that we could do. So when we wanted to be forgiven, Moshe Rabbeinu spent 40 days davening for Klal Yisrael. So what we've done is that we've created something called 40 Days Forward, which is a power to daven for other people for 40 days. We say Tehillim Yud Gimel, Tehillim number 13 for 40 days, and we have a list of people that we daven for, people for Aliyas Neshama, people for Refuah Shleima, people that need Parnasa, people that are going through difficult times, especially now in our situation that everything's going on with the Magaifa that we're living through. So create a list of people that if you want to make a tikkun in the world, just like Hashem destroyed the world for 40 days, so we have a possibility to try and make a fixing up of the world for 40 days by doing Bein Adam Lachaveiroi, davening for other people, and elevating them and thinking about them. And when we say Tehillim, it's not just a person on a list. A person should make a list of people that they know well, and they know their names, and they think about them. And there's a power, tremendous koach that we have to be able to daven for other people for 40 days. And so that's the message that I wanted to share with all of you, that it's very powerful. One last short idea is that we had a couple that were struggling to have children, and we davened for them, my wife and I. And on the 40th day, the lady conceived to have a child, and the baby was born on my wife and I's wedding anniversary that year, which was the 13th of December, and also worked out to be the 13th of Kislev, and we say Tehillim Yud Gimel. So it was an amazing thing to do, to daven for other people. And so that's the koach of 40 days, making a tikkun in the world, just like the world got destroyed, just like now we see that the Meraglim went and they spent that 40 days doing something wrong, and they used their peh, which showed that it was wrong. So the way that we can make a tikkun is by using our peh, by davening for other people and showing that we really care about them. And when we do that, then Hashem should show His rachamim on us, and it should be a real cleansing process of 40 days of building and developing ourselves into greater human beings. So that's the message that I wanted to share with all of you. And thank you for giving me the chance and the opportunity, Rabbi Beda.
Rabbi Gilbert, thank you very, very much for sharing the message with us. I just want to say, if you want, you can have another 40 seconds to just add something else.
The problem is that when you give a rabbi 40 seconds, you never know where that might end up, because